I think when I was becoming an artist, I decided I don't want to be a gallery artist. So now what do? So I decided to teach. And when I taught, I noticed that it was much easier to teach with materials than ideas. Like middle school was my age. And if I said, oh, come up with an idea, they were kind of frozen. If I said, here's a bunch of materials and we're gonna do a sculpture, they were on it instantly. So kind of that was the foundation of, oh, materials are kind of a key to this creativity for people who don't think they're artists.
I came to Remainders as a shopper. Back in 2018, I needed a small piece of fabric. I didn't want to buy a yard of fabric. That seemed silly. I was making a project around Christmas, and I needed, something about like that. And my thought was, you've got to be able to find fabric like that somewhere. And lo and behold, I found Remainders on the internet, and I went there, and it was like, oh my God, this is perfect. That's all they had. I mean, they certainly had rolls and things like that, but it was a much smaller store then. At that time, it was like 900 square feet, really tiny, but they had tons of things. And it wasn't just this piece of fabric, but also any kind of art supply, any kind of anything. I was like, this is amazing, it's incredible. And the prices were super cheap. It was just perfect for an artist. I befriended the owner. Back then, she was running it by herself. She was at the front counter, and we just became friends. And she said, what are you gonna use this fabric for? And I told her I'm making like sort of a traditional jewelry tree in a frame, and I needed a piece of fabric. And she thought that was cool and asked if I would come and teach that class at Remainders. And so that's how it all began, just by buying that one little third of a yard of fabric.
When I moved to Pasadena, we lived up north. When I moved to Pasadena, I was kind of done teaching, and I thought, well, I would really like to teach sewing or art. So I just kind of made a thing in my garage and told the neighborhood kids, and it was really fun. And then the next step was I would teach sewing, and moms would come with bags. They had popped like 70 or 80 bucks on fabric, and the kids would start, and they would be paralyzed because they were deathly afraid of cutting in to this new, expensive, it was so intimidating. So then I decided when I taught, I'm just gonna give everyone materials. I'm just gonna let them go through my fabric stash and let them do whatever they want and teach them to sew. And so that was way less stressful for all of us.
Often people find anxiety when they purchase a really expensive art supply and I want to try painting. I'm going to buy some paint. I'm going to buy some brushes. All of those things are expensive. A tube of paint is never less than $15 for a small tube. And once you get home with that anxiety sets in. Like, I spent all this money. I need to make something good with this. I don't want to waste it. I'm afraid to use it, or what I made isn't good because I've wasted it. I've wasted my money. Here, we remove that barrier completely. Nothing here is expensive. Everything, you can come and grab something, try it out. If it's not for you, if it wasn't something you were drawn to, bring it back, donate it back. It can have a full life cycle where it's not just sitting, not being used. And most of the things we have, another misconception, is that the things we have are not good or not useful anymore, or the paint's dried up, or the ink's dried up, or the fabric's dirty. None of that is true. We get things that people have taken care of and loved and used, or not used, but sat and done nothing with. And so a lot of the things we have are brand new. A lot of the fabric we have is brand new. A lot of the supplies, people maybe used a little bit, then sent it here, and we're just trying to redistribute that back out to the community. So that's definitely a misconception, is that people think, oh, well, it's dirty, like a thrift store. But actually, the opposite is true. People have taken good care of a lot of this stuff, and then they're passing it on. And that's what makes people feel good. I hear that over and over again. I'm glad that this will go to somebody that can use it. I'm glad that it will have another life outside of what I was doing with it.
It really became way more than I ever imagined in terms of the response. So whereas I was really inspired by the materials at first, for my own kind of excitement, I started getting inspired by the people. Like, oh, this is like something.
We have been really successful in getting the message out about what we do and where we are and how people can help. And people have gotten really excited about that. I think we sort of started out with, someone's parent would pass away and they had a hobby room and the child didn't know what to do with it. So they would bring it here in a U-Haul and say, will you take this stuff? Of course we will. This is stuff that probably sat in their hobby room, maybe got used, maybe didn't. But that's all stuff that could be redistributed and gotten into the community. So we take that in. And now we've been able to form a lot of partnerships with the studios around Los Angeles. And they also are now bringing us their stuff that they are done with on their productions or things that have sat in their storage closet. It's been incredible to see the type of things that have just been sitting around for ages not being used at all. And so all of that now we're taking in, and that has really resulted in these huge numbers of donations that we never would have expected before. Last year, we kept 37 tons out of the landfills. In the last 3 months, we've taken in over 32 tons. So we're on track for another great year in that way, just taking in donations and redistribute them and keeping them out of the landfill.
I think the overarching inspiration for me is, number one, keeping things out of the landfill because there's such a ton of stuff, but then also helping people to develop their own creativity, especially people who don't think they're creative. I think it's really important for people, children, adults, everyone, to be able to develop their creativity because that's where solutions come from.
We're trying to save the planet, I guess is the most simple way, a very rudimentary way of saying it. But, people throwing things away, the ideas around fast fashion and people not keeping things around, people buying new things that instead of fixing things that are broken is really a huge problem in this world because all of that stuff has to go somewhere.
Any kind of creative activity is solution-oriented. Like, that's not the color I want. So they're all very small solutions, which I feel, when young people are learning how to solve problems, they're the ones that will go on and make incredible discoveries. It's not just artistic decisions, it becomes real problem-solving skills.
And the landfills are full, the landfills are off-gassing. There's just this huge problem that we're trying to help in our small way. Obviously, 37 tons isn't gonna make a vast difference, but we're also not the only people doing this. So if there were reuse centers like ours in every state or in every large city, that actually could make a really great impact into keeping things out of the landfill.
When I look at when, children are creating, adults in our classes, we try to do unusual classes where we're using a lot of different materials or things you wouldn't go to the art store and get. That problem solving is happening the whole time they're creating. And so then later, that's where the problem solvers come from in our generations and will solve very difficult, very important problems. But I think being creative is the beginning of training to solve problems, climate problems, health problems. It's like a practice. So for me, when creative classes and activities started to be taken out of the schools, I felt very concerned because I knew that it was a practice to become more creative with difficult problems. So I feel like if that comes back, and it's starting to come back, and that's one of the motivations of having classes here, it's not so they can make something cute or beautiful, although that happens. It's because they're developing the skills to solve problems.